Please, let's get divorced. I've inherited a high-rise apartment, so I don't need you anymore.
My husband, who had been away on a business trip after a fight, came back and dropped this bombshell on me. Yet my heart felt strangely calm. Fine, here's the divorce paperwork. I handed him the divorce papers, already filled out on my end. He looked shocked, but quickly signed them, not fully grasping the hell he was about to experience. He left with a smile on his face. I'll wipe that smile off soon enough. My name is Diana. I'm 24 and live in a rural area far from the city. I went to nursing school at 18, graduated without a hitch, and became a nurse. I chose to work at the local hospital, even though many of my peers opted for big city hospitals in Boston or Los Angeles. I didn't want to leave my hometown, and I admired some of the senior nurses I met during my training. Time flew by, and I'm already in my 3rd year as a nurse. I work night shifts and weekends, so I earn more than most women my age. I was single and spent my money freely, investing in experiences and myself. In this rural area, people tend to marry around 25. Half of my friends are married, some even have 3 kids. Seeing them made me think that maybe marriage isn't so bad. So I managed to ask an acquaintance to introduce me to a certain man. So I got introduced to a man named Zeke, who's 29. He seems to be a salesman working for a large, well-known company in this area, and his monthly income is $3,000, so he has no financial problems. Also, when I met him and talked with him, he was a very gentlemanly person, and I gradually began to want to marry him. It seems that he was the same way, and even though he was 29 years old and the eldest of an only child, his parents were worried about his inability to have a girlfriend. A year after we met, we got married. I was 25, right when everyone else was getting married. My friends were happy for me, especially since my husband was a well-off businessman over 30. We had our dream wedding in a garden chapel, and I was on cloud 9. A few months into our marriage, my husband said,
Now that we're settled, let's set some ground rules. No interfering in each other's lives. No asking about work details. And I want separate rooms.
He said. When I first heard my husband say he needed his own space, I was surprised. But then I remembered he'd been saying things like that even before we got married. I like having my alone time too, so I agreed with him on some level. If it made both of us happy, why not? At first, everything was fine, but gradually I noticed we were talking less and less. We both have busy jobs, so we decided not to interfere with each other's lives. We even started having separate dinners. My husband began coming home late, sometimes past midnight. I also have night shifts a few times a month, and I'm currently working in a neonatal unit, which often requires overtime due to staff shortages. So we started drifting apart. Before I knew it, we hadn't spoken for almost a week. That's when I started to worry. Don't you think this is getting out of hand? Can't we at least text or call each other once in a while? When I said that, my husband hesitated and didn't agree right away. He said he didn't want to do that because it would be too controlling. So the conversation fizzled out and time just kept passing. I reached my breaking point and finally confronted him. Enough is enough. How long are you planning to live like this? You avoid conversations, disappear on sudden business trips, and you're not even cooperative when I say I want to have kids. I stayed up late, waiting for him to come home so we could talk. When he saw me, he was annoyed but quickly matched my anger.
I'm tired, and you're bringing this up again? I contribute to the household in our joint account. What's your problem?
After yelling, he walked past me, locked himself in his room, and that was that. We built this house with the idea of raising a family. Both the house and the mortgage are in his name. He even insisted on having a lock on his door. I agree with the idea of ensuring privacy, but when it's done at this moment, I feel like we're being distanced from each other as a family. I sighed deeply, unable to comprehend his childish behavior. The next day, he didn't come home. In the morning, I found a short text.
Got called away on sudden business. Won't be back for a while.
I sighed again, too drained to reply, and started my day. After a year of marriage, I realized my husband is emotionally abusive. He yells whenever things don't go his way and belittles me. It's also pretty sexist. My love for him had completely cooled off. I had been contemplating divorce, but now I've reached my limit. No matter how many times I tried to talk, he'd find an excuse to avoid it. He'd even throw harsh words at me, adding to the stress from my job. As I was thinking about divorce, my husband, who had gone on a business trip and hadn't contacted me at all, suddenly returned home. He returned from his business trip, which had lasted over a month. I'd been so happy without him that I'd forgotten he even existed. Just as I was about to file for divorce, he beat me to it.
Please, just divorce me and leave. I married you for appearances and money. My dad passed away recently, and I inherited a high-rise condo. I can manage without your income. If you cheat, it saves my face too. So, you're useless to me now.
He said this and waited for my response, staring intently. You want to break up with me that badly? I feel insulted and it makes me angry. But if that's what my husband wants, then fine. Okay, fine. Here's the divorce papers. I immediately handed him the divorce papers I had prepared. He looked surprised, clearly not expecting this. What? Hurry up and write. I've already filled out my part and signed it. I pushed the papers toward him, and he chuckled and signed without hesitation. After checking for any errors, I grabbed my pre-packed suitcase and said, "All right, I'm leaving now, just like you wanted," and opened the front door. Suddenly, he panicked.
Wait, when did you prepare all this? Are you really leaving right now? What about the house?
I pointed to some documents on the table. Those were papers detailing how to change the utilities into my name and how we would handle things post-divorce. Let's discuss future matters through the lawyer whose business card is there. So don't call me personally, okay? I left the house, making sure to drive the point home. A few days later, we sat across from each other, lawyers present. My usually composed husband looked flustered and uneasy. He must have read the certified mail I sent. So, Zeke, let me make myself clear. I've got solid evidence of your affair and your ongoing emotional abuse, which I've recorded. So, you'll be paying me $20,000 in damages. He stood up abruptly, almost hysterical.
When did you start planning all this? This is insane.
I wondered what he was talking about. I had started investigating his infidelity 3 months ago. In fact, I had been consulting a colleague about him since then. She advised that if he was cheating, I could claim damages, so it was worth looking into. Although I hadn't seen any signs of another woman, I followed her advice and hired a private investigator, and the evidence just kept coming. I had tried to confront him several times but failed. The only time I could finally confront him was that night, but I had known about his infidelity for a while. I even hired the investigator again when his business trips conveniently increased. Turns out he was using the trips as an excuse to stay with his mistress, even pretending she was his wife at his stepfather's family funeral. So I knew exactly what he was doing while he was away on business. I also knew his stepfather had passed away, but since I wasn't invited and barely knew the man, I didn't attend. During this time, I learned from the investigator that my husband was planning to inherit and sell a high-rise apartment with his mistress. So I packed my bags right away. Certainly, my husband will bring up divorce. That's what I thought as I prepared the divorce papers and packed my suitcase. Surprisingly, I was spot on, and it was hard to hold back my laughter. His face turned pale the moment he heard it. Well, it makes sense. He had no secrets from me. So, you see, I knew all along. Will you be okay with that? Let's just settle on alimony for now, and then sell the house and car to divide the assets. Before I could finish, my husband interrupts.
No way! I was planning to live in that house with her after kicking you out. And without my car, my job will be affected. So no, it's not happening.
I was stunned but not surprised. My lawyer nodded and handed over the next document. My husband looked puzzled, so I explained. Those are marital assets we bought together. If you don't want to let them go for personal reasons, we'll calculate the selling price and I'll take half from our joint account. You're a salesman at a big corporation, and you can't understand a simple document? His face turned red with shame. He had no choice but to reluctantly agree and sign. In the end, he kept the house and car, but most of the cash went to me as alimony and asset division. He was left with just a few tens of dollars. We filed the divorce papers and became strangers. I was enjoying a peaceful life for a while, until a few months later, my ex-husband called. I ignored him at first, but he was so persistent that I finally picked up to give him a piece of my mind. Before I could say anything, he pleaded.
Please, Diana, just lend me $1,000.
Even though it's been a while, he's asking for money. I was about to hang up when he hurriedly continued.
Actually, there are some issues with the high-rise condo, and I'm in trouble.
Reluctantly, I listened, and he began to speak slowly. Apparently, the high-rise condo he inherited from his father-in-law was appraised for much less than he expected. The difference wasn't small, it was significant enough to be a problem. And it didn't stop there. The tax office got suspicious because he sold the high-rise condo immediately after inheriting it. They thought he might have bought it just to reduce inheritance taxes. I remember seeing news about how the wealthy are using high-rise condos for tax evasion, and the government is cracking down. My ex-husband, who probably never paid attention to such news, must have foolishly sold it right away to make a quick buck. As a result, the court determined he had to pay additional inheritance taxes. On top of that, his mistress Elisa found out about me and left him saying, "I didn't know you were married, you liar." She left just as he was planning to marry her after divorcing me. I couldn't help but laugh. He's been going through a lengthy divorce mediation ever since, and it finally ended in court. He spent a fortune on the trial, lost, and even had a child with her, so he had to pay alimony. His assets went negative. He also had to resign from his job after it was revealed that he had been using me and deceiving the other woman. His parents are both gone, and he's an only child. Even his relatives look down on him. He's in financial ruin due to massive debts and had no choice but to turn to me. If it were just that, I could say, it's your own fault. But then he says something astonishing.
We were married once, so you should support me. You've been ignoring all my messages, so you have some responsibility too, right?
Is he trying to say that I'm also to blame? I'm not particularly empathetic, cute, or beautiful. Still, I thought it was absolutely wrong to be held responsible alongside such a lowlife. Enough! Who would support a man like you? You're an adult. Clean up your own mess. Aren't you ashamed to hear this from someone younger than you? I said that and hung up without listening to his reply. He kept calling, so I answered and said, if you call again, I'll report you to the police for stalking. And the storm of calls stopped. I wouldn't put it past him to show up at my house. So I moved to a secure rental condo and changed my phone number. He hasn't contacted me since. I later learned about his miserable fate through mutual acquaintances. Desperate for money, he resorted to theft. At first, he was shoplifting sandwiches from supermarkets and had been warned by the store manager multiple times. He didn't stop even after the police gave him a severe warning. He was supposed to have settled things with the supermarket after the police got involved, but my incorrigible ex-husband did it again. Of course, the supermarket was watching him. The moment he walked in, they kept an eye on him. And, as expected, he shoplifted again. This time, a young part-time female employee chased after him at full speed. She was a college student and a track and field athlete who had competed in national championships, so she easily caught up to him. However, the strength difference between a young woman and an adult man was too great, and he ended up causing her injuries, including a fracture that took 2 weeks to heal. That incident led to his prosecution for repeated theft and assault, and he was found guilty with a suspended sentence. Now he's homeless, living somewhere downtown, relying on the kindness of strangers. When I heard this, I couldn't even laugh. It was too tragic. But he brought it upon himself. He had no choice but to accept his fate as his own doing. As for me, when I turned 30, I transferred to a major hospital in Los Angeles as part of a promotion. I met a clinical engineer there, and we hit it off and started dating. He chose to be with me, even after I told him everything about my past. We dated carefully, lived together for a while, and got married at 35. Since I had built up a decent career, I decided to take it easy on the work front and focus on preconception care. Fortunately, within about 6 months, I became pregnant. And now I'm enjoying a happy pregnancy.